Hello and welcome to this video on Catholic social teaching. This topic is part of our learning videos for Catholic practices. In this video, we'll be investigating the questions: what is Catholic social teaching? How does Catholic social teaching mean you should treat others? And how do CAFOD help? So our first question is, what is Catholic social teaching? Catholic social teaching has been developed from the sanctity of life doctrine, that all human life is important and therefore every person, no matter who they are or where they're from, deserve to be treated with love. Human life should always be protected, treated with dignity, considered sacred, and treated with respect. This is because all humans have been created imago Dei, which means created in God's image. There are several teachings in the Bible which tells us how to treat our neighbour. Firstly, in Jesus' greatest commandments, Jesus tells us to love God and to love our neighbour. By practising Catholic social teaching, you are obeying these commandments. Secondly, the parable of the Good Samaritan shows the selfless love we should show for all humans, no matter who they are or where they're from. And finally, the parable of the sheep and the goats tells us to care for our neighbour like we would Jesus. In Matthew it says, "Whatever you did not do for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did not do for me." The brothers and sisters in this quote means your neighbour, and the me in this quote relates to God. This reminds us to treat our neighbours with love and respect, as we are all created in God's image. Next, we will look at the second question: how does Catholic social teaching mean we should treat others? To show the most love to our neighbours, we need to change the way in which we see the world. In today's world, the people treated with the highest priority are the rich and powerful, whereas the people who are treated in less regard are the poor and vulnerable. This is the problem, as the poor and vulnerable are our neighbours that need our love the most. To apply Catholic social teaching correctly, we must prioritise the poor and vulnerable and turn society on its head, so that the poor, who need our love the most, are our priority. This is because we should never forget that the planet belongs to the whole of mankind and not just the rich and powerful. We must remember that the earth belongs to everyone, not just the rich. And to not share one's wealth with the poor is to steal from them and to take away their livelihood. These sources of authority highlight the important themes in Catholic social teaching, which is justice, peace, and reconciliation. Justice is doing what is right and what is fair. A source of authority to support this is anyone who does not do right is not a child of God. An example of how justice is displayed in Catholic social teaching is during the COVID-19 pandemic, where Pope Francis called for the poorest people to have priority access to the vaccine before anyone else. This is because if they are in a country where they cannot afford healthcare or are in overcrowded homes, they are more at risk of the illness. Peace means encouraging harmony amongst all humans and preventing conflict. This is shown in the source of authority: "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the sons of God." This tells Catholics that God wants his children to promote peace. An example of this is the Catholic charity Pax Christi, which was set up by Catholics to transform a world shaken by violence and terrorism. Reconciliation is where Catholics show forgiveness to all, wherever and whoever they are. In Luke, reconciliation is seen as important as it says, "Forgive and you'll be forgiven." An example of reconciliation in Catholic social teaching is during Pope John Paul II's speech at World Peace Day, after the 9/11 Twin Tower attacks. He spoke about the need for reconciliation and said that there is no peace without justice and no justice without forgiveness. So, our final question is, how do CAFOD help? A really good way to remember this is with the acronym SAIL. Speaking out, aid, meaning emergency aid, long-term development, and education. CAFOD help by speaking out. This is by promoting fair trade products, which helps bring fairer prices and working conditions to those in the developing world. CAFOD also campaigned to cancel all the debt owed by the world's poorest countries. CAFOD helped with emergency aid by providing food, shelter and medicine when a country has been affected by war or a natural disaster. CAFOD help with long-term development, which allows a country to become self-sufficient and not rely on anyone else. CAFOD use a famous quote to explain their work to others. Give a man a fish and you'll feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you'll feed him for a lifetime. This quote is saying that instead of giving someone in need a job or some food, if you teach them literacy or how to get food for themselves, they will become self-sufficient and able to care for themselves and their future generations. And finally, CAFOD educators by raising awareness of those in need through not only social media, but by coming into schools and providing workshops and assemblies to educators. So now we have completed this revision lesson on Catholic social teaching, let's recap those 3 questions. Firstly, Catholic social teaching is the belief that by being human, all life has value, and therefore everyone should be treated with respect, no matter who they are or where they are from. We should always love our neighbour and help those most in need in society. How does Catholic social teaching mean you should treat others? Tells us that we have to flip society on its head, as we must remember that the whole earth is entrusted to all of mankind, and not just the rich and powerful. The poor and the vulnerable must be made a priority, and this is done by fighting for peace, justice, and helping those with reconciliation. And finally, we have learnt how CAFOD work for social justice through the acronym SAIL. This is by speaking out for poorer countries, providing emergency aid in times of disaster, helping with long-term development so societies in need can become self-sufficient, and by raising awareness and educating us on the need to care for those most in need.